Rain poured down in sheets across the dimly lit motel parking lot. Sarah Collins clutched her 3-year-old son Jamie tightly against her chest, her back pressed against their motel room door. 3 men in dark suits approached slowly, their expressions cold and calculating. One reached inside his jacket. "The Blackwood family sends their regards," the tallest one said, his voice barely audible above the rainfall. "Hand over the boy, and we can make this easy." Sarah's heart hammered in her chest as she pulled Jamie closer. "Please, he's just a child," she pleaded. Suddenly, headlights cut through the darkness as a black truck screeched into the lot. The door flung open, and a man with a scarred face and cold eyes stepped out. Without hesitation, he moved between Sarah and the attackers. "Get in if you want to live," he commanded, not taking his eyes off the threat. Sarah Collins had been working as a pediatric nurse for 8 years. Her life revolved around 2 things: her work healing children and raising her own son, Jamie. Her scrubs were always slightly wrinkled from the hasty morning routine of getting a 3-year-old fed, dressed, and dropped at daycare before her shift. The dark circles under her eyes told the story of a woman who rarely put herself first. Sarah's colleagues respected her skill and compassion. Patients loved her gentle touch and warm smile. But few knew much about her personal life, how she worked extra shifts to afford their modest 1-bedroom apartment, how she read Jamie bedtime stories no matter how exhausted she felt, or how she'd been alone since before her son was born. Only her closest friend knew about Jamie's father, a brief relationship with a man named Victor, who disappeared before she even knew she was pregnant. Sarah had made peace with raising Jamie alone. She never expected to hear Victor's name again, let alone have it turn her entire world upside down. Sarah's shift had ended late, as usual. The children's ward had been busy with a flu outbreak, and she'd stayed an extra hour to help the incoming night nurse get settled. By the time she arrived at Happy Sprouts daycare, Jamie was the last child waiting. "Mommy," he exclaimed, running toward her with a crayon drawing clutched in his small hand. "Hey, little man," Sarah said, scooping him up. "I'm sorry I'm late." "It's okay, I made you a picture." Jamie held up his artwork, a crude but heartfelt rendering of 2 stick figures holding hands beneath a yellow sun. Miss Patel, the daycare owner, approached with a kind smile. "He's such a patient boy. Oh, and Sarah, a courier delivered this for you earlier." She handed over a thick manila envelope, said it was important. "For me? Here?" Sarah frowned, examining the envelope. There was no return address, just her name typed on a label. "That's strange. The courier was very insistent it be delivered today," Ms. Patel added with a shrug. Sarah tucked the envelope into her bag, too focused on getting Jamie home for dinner to worry about it. Their evening routine was clockwork: macaroni and cheese for dinner, Jamie's favorite, bath time with too many bubbles, 2 bedtime stories, never just one, and finally, blessed silence as Jamie drifted off to sleep. Only then did Sarah remember the mysterious envelope. She retrieved it from her bag and settled on their worn sofa, slicing it open with a kitchen knife. Inside was a stack of legal documents and a handwritten letter on expensive stationery. The letterhead read, "Winters, Associates, Attorneys at Law." Sarah's eyes widened as she began to read. "Dear Miss Collins, it is with deep regret that we inform you of the passing of Mr. Blank, Victor Blackwood, founder and CEO of Blackwood Technologies. In accordance with Mr. Sateman 7, VAT, Blackwood's final wishes, we are contacting you regarding your son, James Collins, who has been named as the primary beneficiary of Mr. Point 4. Thus is in Rod Hosen Roddard, Blackwood's estate, valued at approximately $50 million. Sarah gasped, the letter slipping from her fingers. Victor Blackwood? The Victor Blackwood? The tech mogul whose face had graced magazine covers? The man worth billions whose death had been reported as a tragic accident just last week? That's impossible, she whispered to her empty living room. With trembling hands, she retrieved the letter and continued reading. Mr. Blackwood has left a personal letter for you, enclosed herein. As his attorneys, we are instructed to arrange a meeting at your earliest convenience to discuss the inheritance and the establishment of trusts for young James. Please contact our office as soon as possible. Sarah set aside the formal letter and found another envelope with her name written in an unfamiliar hand. She opened it cautiously. "Sarah, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I owe you an explanation for my absence in your and Jamie's lives. The simple truth is that I stayed away to protect you both. My family, particularly my brother Maxwell, is dangerous. The Blackwood fortune has a dark history, and I've spent years trying to legitimize our company and break free from that past. When we met, I was living under an assumed name, trying to escape my reality for just a little while. Then I learned you were pregnant, and I knew that acknowledging our child would put both of you in danger. So I watched from afar, making sure you were provided for anonymously. Now that I'm gone, Jamie is my heir. I've put every possible legal protection in place, but I fear it won't be enough. Maxwell will come for him, for the money, the company, all of it. Trust no one from the Blackwood family. I've arranged for security, but you must be vigilant. My attorneys will help you access the funds and protection I've arranged. I'm sorry for everything I couldn't be for both of you. Victor. Sarah read the letter 3 times, her mind reeling. The Victor she'd known was a software engineer named Vic, who rented the apartment downstairs for 6 months. He was kind, intelligent, and charming, but also private and sometimes mysterious. Their relationship had been brief but intense. When he disappeared without explanation, she'd assumed he was just another man afraid of commitment. Not once had she imagined he was Victor Blackwood, hiding from his own life. $50 million? She whispered, looking toward Jamie's bedroom door. Her son, their son, was now one of the wealthiest children in the country. Sarah barely slept that night. By morning, she'd convinced herself to call the law firm and get more information before jumping to conclusions. This could be an elaborate scam or a case of mistaken identity. But the senior partner, Mr. Winters himself, confirmed everything on the call. Ms. Collins, we've been expecting your call. I personally handled Mr. Blackwood's estate planning. DNA confirmation is part of the inheritance process, but Mr. Blackwood was quite certain about Jamie's paternity. I just don't understand why he never told me, Sarah said. Victor was a complicated man with complicated problems, Mr. Winters replied carefully. He mentioned you were aware of his family's reputation. No, I knew nothing about his family. Nothing real anyway. A pause. I see. Then there's much to discuss. Perhaps you could come to our offices tomorrow? We can arrange for childcare if Jamie stays with me, Sarah interrupted firmly. Of course. Shall we say 10 a.m.? The meeting confirmed everything. DNA tests would be formalities. Trust funds were already established. A monthly allowance would begin immediately. Properties around the world now belonged to Jamie, with Sarah as trustee until he turned 25. As they left the imposing downtown law office, Sarah felt overwhelmed. What do I do now, Jamie? She asked her oblivious son, who was more interested in the toy car Mr. Winters had given him. Ice cream? Jamie suggested hopefully. Sarah laughed, a release of tension. You know what? Yes, let's get ice cream. That afternoon, as Jamie napped, Sarah researched Victor Blackwood online. His company had revolutionized encryption technology. His personal worth had been estimated at over $3 billion. And his family. There were rumors of mob connections dating back generations. His brother Maxwell was now interim CEO, a man with cold eyes and a reputation for ruthlessness in business. Sarah shivered, remembering Victor's warning letter. The next day, a Friday, Sarah requested a week off from the hospital, claiming a family emergency. Her supervisor was understanding. Sarah rarely took time off. That evening, picking up groceries, Sarah first noticed the black SUV. It was parked across from the store entrance, engine running. The windows were tinted, but she felt eyes watching her. When she exited with Jamie, the SUV pulled away slowly. A coincidence, she told herself, but on Saturday she saw it again outside Jamie's favorite playground, and Sunday morning, parked down the street from their apartment building. On Monday, Sarah took Jamie to the zoo, trying to maintain normalcy while her anxiety grew. As they watched the elephants, she noticed a man in a dark suit standing too close, his attention fixed not on the animals but on Jamie. When she quickly moved to the next exhibit, he followed. Sarah's heart raced as she pulled Jamie closer, whispering that they needed to leave. As they hurried toward the exit, she glanced back to see not one but 3 men in suits converging on their position. She broke into a run, carrying Jamie despite his protests about missing the lions. At the parking lot, she fumbled with her keys, hands shaking as she secured Jamie in his car seat and started the engine. In her rearview mirror, the men emerged from the zoo entrance, scanning the parking lot. Sarah drove home taking a circuitous route, checking constantly to ensure they weren't followed. That night, she double-checked every window and door lock, then sat in the darkened living room with a kitchen knife beside her, jumping at every sound from the street below. Morning came without incident. Sarah began to wonder if paranoia was getting the better of her. But then Mr. Winters called. Ms. Collins, I wanted to check in. Have you noticed anything concerning? Anyone following you, perhaps? Sarah's blood ran cold. Yes, actually. Men in suits, a black SUV, a heavy sigh from the attorney. I was afraid of this. Victor left instructions about security arrangements, but the paperwork is still being processed. I'll expedite everything. What should I do until then? Stay vigilant. Vary your routines. Perhaps visit friends or family out of town. I don't have anyone, Sarah admitted. Her parents had passed years ago and she had no siblings. Friends were mostly work colleagues, no one she could endanger with her situation. After the call, Sarah packed a small emergency bag, clothes, toiletries, Jamie's favorite stuffed elephant, and all their important documents, just in case. That evening, Sarah cooked dinner with one eye on the street outside. Jamie was coloring at the coffee table, humming to himself, blissfully unaware of his mother's growing fear. The sound of breaking glass shattered the quiet. Sarah spun toward the noise, the bedroom window. She snatched Jamie up and ran to the kitchen. grabbing her phone and the emergency bag from the coat closet. Heavy footsteps moved through the apartment. Sarah covered Jamie's mouth gently, silently pleading with him to stay quiet as they crouched behind the kitchen island. "Check everywhere," a man's voice commanded. "The kid's inheritance paperwork must be here somewhere." Sarah heard drawers being emptied, furniture overturned. Jamie's eyes were wide with fear, but he remained silent, sensing his mother's terror. Minutes stretched like hours as the intruders ransacked the apartment. Finally, one called out, "Nothing here about the trusts or accounts. Leave the message." Another voice directed, "They'll get the point." More sounds of destruction, then receding footsteps, and finally silence. Sarah waited 10 agonizing minutes before daring to move. The apartment was unrecognizable. Every drawer had been emptied, every cushion slashed. Jamie's toys lay broken. In the center of the living room wall, someone had pinned a note with a kitchen knife, her own knife, taken from the block. "The money belongs to the Blackwood family. Walk away, or else." Sarah read it once, then grabbed Jamie and the emergency bag. There was no time to salvage anything else. They needed to run now. "Mommy, my elephant." Jamie cried as she carried him toward the door. Sarah hesitated, then spotted the stuffed toy beneath an overturned chair. She grabbed it and thrust it into Jamie's arms. "We're going on an adventure, baby," she whispered, trying to keep her voice steady. "We need to be very quiet and very brave, okay?" Jamie nodded solemnly, clutching his elephant. Sarah checked the hallway, then hurried toward the back stairs rather than the elevator. Her car would be too obvious. They'd be watching it. Instead, they slipped out through the service entrance and began walking briskly away from their home into an uncertain night. Sarah's mind raced as they put distance between themselves and the apartment. She had $243 in her wallet, her debit card, and about $30 in savings. The inheritance meant nothing if they weren't alive to use it. They needed to disappear. "Where are we going, Mommy?" Jamie asked as Sarah hurried them through darkening streets, constantly checking over her shoulder. "On a trip, sweetheart. A surprise trip," she improvised, forcing brightness into her voice. First, she needed cash. Sarah stopped at an ATM far from their neighborhood and withdrew her entire savings balance. Next, she bought 2 disposable phones from a convenience store, activating one and keeping the other as backup. The bus station seemed safer than the airport. Fewer cameras, less security, more anonymity. Sarah purchased tickets to Millfield, her small hometown 8 hours away. Nobody would think to look for her there. She hadn't visited since her parents' funeral 5 years ago. The clerk informed her. Sarah found the most secluded corner of the waiting area and sat with Jamie on her lap, her back to the wall so she could watch everyone who entered. She called Mr. Winters on the new phone. "Someone broke into our apartment," she whispered when he answered. "They left a threatening note about the money." "Where are you now?" Alarm colored his voice. "Somewhere safe?" Sarah lied. "We're leaving the city." "Miss Collins, please let me arrange proper security." "It's too late for that," she interrupted. "They already found us once. At least tell me where you're going so I can. I'll contact you when we're settled." Sarah ended the call, then turned off the phone. If Maxwell Blackwood had the resources to find her apartment, he might be able to track her calls too. Jamie grew restless as they waited, so Sarah let him play a game on her phone to keep him occupied. Later, as they boarded the bus, Jamie tugged her sleeve. "Mommy, look," he said, showing her the phone screen. "I took pictures like you taught me." Sarah's heart nearly stopped. On the screen was a photo of a stern-faced man in a dark suit standing near the ticket counter, partially hidden behind a pillar. Jamie had been innocently practicing photography, not realizing he'd captured one of their pursuers. "When did you take this?" she whispered. "Just now. He was watching us," Jamie said matter-of-factly. "Is he playing hide-and-seek?" Sarah pretended to smile as she guided Jamie to their seats in the middle of the bus. "Maybe. Let's sit quietly now." The bus pulled away from the station, and Sarah allowed herself a small breath of relief. But 20 minutes into the journey, at the first stop, 2 men in dark suits boarded. They weren't the same ones from the zoo, but their purposeful movements and scanning gazes told Sarah they were looking for someone, looking for Jamie. They took seats at the front, occasionally glancing back through the bus. Sarah kept her head down, grateful for the baseball cap she'd purchased at the station gift shop. Jamie had fallen asleep against her, his small body heavy with exhaustion. At the next rest stop, an hour later, the driver announced a 15-minute break. Sarah noticed the men conferring, looking in her direction. She couldn't stay on the bus, but getting off meant exposing themselves. She waited until most passengers had disembarked, then gently woke Jamie. "We're going to play a game," she whispered. "We need to be super quiet and follow Mommy very quickly, okay?" Jamie nodded, still groggy. Sarah waited until the men stepped off the bus, then slipped out the opposite door with Jamie in her arms and the emergency bag over her shoulder. Rain had started to fall, providing some cover as Sarah hurried away from the well-lit rest area. She spotted a small motel across the highway, the Blue Pine Lodge, its neon sign flickering in the growing storm. Crossing carefully with Jamie, Sarah approached the motel office. The elderly clerk barely looked up from his television program as she paid cash for one night. Room 8 at the far end of the building. Do you have a back entrance? Sarah asked casually. Door at the end of the hall leads to the parking lot, he replied, sliding her a key, an actual metal key, not a key card. Sarah thanked him and headed out, intending to circle around to the back. The rain had intensified, soaking through their clothes. Jamie was fully awake now, confused and beginning to fuss about being wet and cold. Almost there, baby, Sarah promised. Then we'll get dry and warm. As they rounded the corner toward the back of the motel, 3 dark figures stepped out from between parked cars. Sarah froze, instinctively pulling Jamie closer. Ms. Collins, the tallest one said, you're making this much harder than it needs to be. Sarah backed away slowly. I don't know what you want, but please, he's just a child. The boy is a Blackwood, another man stated coldly. He belongs with his family. I'm his family, Sarah countered, her voice stronger than she felt. Mr. Maxwell Blackwood disagrees. The inheritance is a family matter. Sarah continued backing up until she felt the motel wall behind her. There was nowhere left to run. Rain poured down around them as the men advanced slowly. The Blackwood family sends their regards, the tall one said. Hand over the boy, and we can make this easy. Please, Sarah begged. He's just a child. The screech of tires cut through the rainfall as a black pickup truck swerved into the parking lot, skidding to a halt between Sarah and the men. The driver's door flung open, and a man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, with a scarred face and piercing eyes. Without hesitation, he moved to stand between Sarah and the threat. Get in if you want to live, he commanded, not taking his eyes off the men. The 3 suits reached inside their jackets, but the newcomer moved with shocking speed. A blur of precise violence followed. One man down with a throat strike, another doubled over from a devastating blow to the solar plexus, the third stumbling back with blood streaming from his nose. Now, the scarred man barked at Sarah, who stood frozen in astonishment. The brief immobility broke, and Sarah rushed to the passenger side, struggling to open the door while holding Jamie. Once inside, she fumbled with Jamie's seatbelt, then her own, as their mysterious rescuer returned to the driver's seat. The truck roared to life and sped away, leaving the motel and the injured men behind. Sarah clutched Jamie protectively, her mind reeling. Had they escaped one threat only to fall into another? Who are you? She finally managed to ask, eyeing the stranger warily. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, eyes never leaving the road. A jagged scar ran from his right temple down to his jaw, giving his otherwise handsome face a dangerous quality. He was younger than she'd first thought, mid-30s perhaps, with close-cropped dark hair and the hyper-vigilant posture of a soldier. Dominic Reyes, he answered, his voice deep and controlled. I worked for Victor. How did you find us? Winters activated the emergency protocol when you called him. I've been tracking you since you left your apartment. Tracking me? Sarah's voice rose. So you're just another Blackwood lackey? Dominic's jaw tightened. If I worked for Maxwell, you and the boy would be in a very different vehicle right now. Jamie, who had been silent since the confrontation, suddenly spoke. You helped us from the bad men. Dominic's eyes flickered to the rear-view mirror, meeting Jamie's gaze briefly. Something in his expression softened. Yes, thank you, Jamie said solemnly, clutching his elephant. Sarah remained unconvinced. How do I know I can trust you? You don't. Dominic checked the mirrors again. But Victor did. He made me swear a blood oath to protect his son if anything happened to him. A blood oath? What does that even mean? It means I'll die before I let anything happen to the boy. They drove in tense silence for nearly an hour, taking back roads and making unpredictable turns. Sarah noticed Dominic checking the mirrors constantly, his vigilance never wavering. Where are you taking us? She finally asked. Somewhere safe. Somewhere Maxwell's men won't find you easily. I want specifics, Mr. Reyes. Dominic, he corrected. And specifics are dangerous right now. Your phone might be compromised. I bought a disposable and used your debit card at the same location, he interrupted. Amateur mistake. Sarah bristled. Excuse me for not being an expert at running for my life with a 3-year-old. Dominic's expression remained impassive, but he seemed to consider her words. You did well, he conceded. Most people would have panicked completely. You kept your head and protected your son. Victor was right about you. Victor spoke about me. He kept tabs on you both, wanted to make sure you were safe. Safe? Sarah's voice cracked with emotion. If he wanted us safe, he should have warned me about his psychotic family before he died and left my son with a target on his back. Dominic didn't respond immediately. When he did, his voice was quieter. Victor made many mistakes, but loving his son wasn't one of them. The truck turned onto a narrow mountain road, climbing steadily through thick forest. The rain had stopped, but mist hung between the trees, creating an otherworldly atmosphere. Jamie had fallen asleep again, exhausted by the night's events. How much farther? Sarah asked, her own fatigue becoming overwhelming. Another 30 minutes. Sarah struggled to keep her eyes open, the adrenaline crash hitting hard. Despite her mistrust of this dangerous-looking stranger, her body was betraying her with waves of exhaustion. "Sleep," Dominic said, as if reading her thoughts. "I'll wake you when we arrive." "I can't. You're dead on your feet, and you'll need your strength later. I won't harm you or the boy." Against her better judgment, Sarah felt her eyes closing. The rhythmic sound of tires on the mountain road lulled her into a fitful sleep, her hand still protectively touching Jamie's leg. She awoke to Dominic gently shaking her shoulder. "We're here." Sarah jerked upright, momentarily disoriented. Outside the window stood a large cabin, illuminated by the truck's headlights. The structure looked sturdy and well-maintained, with a wide porch and shuttered windows. All around was dense forest with no other buildings visible. "Where are we?" "My place." Off-grid, well-stocked, and secured. Dominic exited the truck and came around to her side. "Let me take the boy." Sarah instinctively tightened her grip on Jamie. Dominic sighed. "You're exhausted. He's getting heavy, and I'm not going to hurt him. Let me help." After a moment's hesitation, Sarah allowed Dominic to lift the sleeping Jamie from her arms. She watched as he carried her son with unexpected gentleness, supporting his head and moving carefully to avoid waking him. The cabin's interior was surprisingly comfortable, rustic but clean, with solid furniture and warm lighting from kerosene lamps. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, and a wood stove stood in the kitchen area. "The generator's solar," Dominic explained as he laid Jamie on a sofa. "But we use it sparingly. Bedroom's through there. You and the boy can take it. Where will you sleep?" "I'll take the couch. I don't sleep much anyway." Sarah wanted to ask a dozen more questions, but exhaustion was claiming her again. She managed to remove Jamie's shoes and carry him to the bedroom, where a large bed with clean linens awaited. After removing her own shoes, she crawled in beside her son, too tired even to change their clothes. Her last conscious thought was that she'd deal with Dominic Reyes and his connection to Victor in the morning. For now, they were dry, warm, and, she hoped, safe from Maxwell Blackwood's men. Morning light filtered through wooden blinds, momentarily confusing Sarah as she opened her eyes. The unfamiliar bedroom came into focus slowly, events of the previous night flooding back with jarring clarity. Beside her, Jamie still slept peacefully, his stuffed elephant clutched to his chest. Sarah slipped quietly from the bed, grimacing at her rumpled clothes from yesterday. A quick search revealed a small adjoining bathroom with basic toiletries. After freshening up as best she could, she cautiously opened the bedroom door. The scent of coffee and something cooking guided her to the kitchen, where she found Dominic at the stove, his back to her. In daylight, his imposing figure was even more apparent. Broad shoulders, powerful build, the stance of someone always ready for trouble. He wore a simple black t-shirt that revealed muscled arms marked with several scars. "You should know I'm here," Sarah announced, not wanting to startle him. Dominic turned, spatula in hand. "I knew." Floorboard by the door creaks. "Of course it does," Sarah muttered. "What are you making?" "Eggs, bacon, toast, there's coffee." He nodded toward a pot on the counter. Sarah found a mug and poured herself some, grateful for the rich aroma. "Thank you. Your bag's by the sofa. I brought it in from the truck." Sarah retrieved her emergency bag, relieved to find clean clothes for herself and Jamie. "I'd like to change before breakfast, if that's okay." Dominic nodded, returning his attention to the stove. When Sarah emerged from the bedroom in fresh clothes, Jamie was awake and sitting at the small kitchen table, already eating bacon with his fingers and chatting animatedly. "Mommy, Mr. Dom has a treehouse. Can I see it, please?" Sarah raised an eyebrow at Dominic, who was setting a plate of food at the place opposite Jamie. "It's a hunting blind," he clarified, something like embarrassment crossing his features. "Not a treehouse." "Same thing," Jamie insisted. "It's in a tree." "Maybe later, Jamie," Sarah said, taking a seat. "Mr. Reyes and I need to talk first." "Dominic," he corrected again, sitting down with his own plate. They ate in awkward silence for a few minutes, broken only by Jamie's occasional comments about the cabin or questions about wildlife in the area. Sarah was surprised by how patiently Dominic answered each one, his severe expression softening slightly when addressing the boy. After breakfast, Sarah set Jamie up with paper and crayons from her bag, positioning him where she could see him from the kitchen table. Then she fixed Dominic with a steady gaze. "I need answers. All of them." Dominic nodded, refilling their coffee mugs before sitting across from her. "What do you want to know first? Who exactly are you? What was your relationship with Victor?" "I was his head of security for the past 6 years. Before that," he hesitated. "I worked for Maxwell Blackwood." Sarah tensed. "So you did work for the Blackwoods?" "Yes and no. I was hired muscle for Maxwell's side businesses, things Victor was trying to distance the company from." "Criminal things," Sarah stated flatly. Dominic's expression hardened. The Blackwood fortune wasn't built on software alone. 3 generations of connections to organized crime, money laundering, extortion. Victor was the first to try legitimizing everything, and his brother didn't approve. Maxwell saw it as weakness, betrayal of the family legacy. Sarah absorbed this, thinking of her gentle son now connected to such a family. How did you end up working for Victor instead? Something like pain flickered across Dominic's scarred face. I was ordered to send Victor a message, rough him up, scare him into line. It went wrong. Victor fought back better than expected, got me with a letter opener. He traced the scar on his face. Then he did something unexpected. Instead of finishing me or calling the police, he helped me. Stopped the bleeding. Talked to me. Why would he help someone sent to hurt him? That's what I asked. He said he saw something in me worth saving. Dominic's voice held rare emotion. He offered me a choice, a real job, legitimate work protecting him instead of threatening others for his brother. And you took it. Best decision I ever made. Dominic's gaze drifted to Jamie, who was happily drawing at the coffee table. Victor was a good man trying to overcome a bad legacy. When he found out about Jamie, that he was going to be a father, it changed everything for him. If he cared so much, why didn't he tell me the truth? Why abandon us? The hurt in Sarah's voice was palpable. Because Maxwell had already threatened you once. Sarah's eyes widened. What? When? Early in your pregnancy. You wouldn't remember. It was subtle. A car following you home from work. A break-in at your building where nothing was taken. Victor recognized the patterns. He knew if Maxwell confirmed you were carrying Victor's child, you'd both be in danger. So he just disappeared? Sarah's voice cracked with long-buried pain. He set up anonymous support, your apartment's surprisingly low rent, the scholarship fund that covered your nursing program, the mysterious benefactor for your daycare costs. Sarah sat back, stunned. She'd always attributed those strokes of good fortune to luck or community programs. That was Victor? Dominic nodded. He watched from a distance. Had a security detail on you both during any potential high-risk periods. Why didn't he warn me before he died? Leave some kind of explanation beyond a letter with his will? His death wasn't planned, Sarah. It wasn't an accident either. The implication hung heavy between them. Maxwell killed his own brother. Nothing provable. The yacht's steering system malfunctioned during a solo night trip. Very convenient timing. Just as Victor was finalizing changes to Blackwood Technologies' structure that would have removed Maxwell from the board, Sarah pressed her hands against her temples, overwhelmed. And now Maxwell wants Jamie's inheritance. It's more than just money, Dominic explained gravely. Jamie's inheritance includes controlling interest in Blackwood Technologies. Victor restructured everything, ensuring his son would eventually have final say over the company's future. Maxwell sees it as his birthright being handed to a child he considers an outsider. He's hunting a 3-year-old for corporate control. Sarah's voice rose with indignation. Maxwell Blackwood sees the world in terms of power and possession. To him, Jamie is both an obstacle and a tool. Remove the obstacle, control the tool. What does that mean? Dominic's expression darkened. Best case, he gains custody through legal maneuvering, using Jamie as a puppet owner while controlling everything. Worst case, he didn't finish, but Sarah understood. He'd hurt a child? His own nephew? Maxwell once ordered a business rival's entire family killed to send a message. Dominic's voice was flat. Blood relation means little to him. Sarah looked over at Jamie, innocently coloring, unaware of the dangers surrounding him. What do we do now? We have 3 options, Dominic said methodically. 1. You could give up the inheritance, sign whatever papers Maxwell wants, and hope he leaves you alone after. Would he? Unlikely. You'd know too much, and Jamie would always be a potential claimant. So that's not really an option, Sarah said bitterly. What's 2? You and Jamie disappear completely. New identities, new location, never access the inheritance. Spend our lives looking over our shoulders, never feeling safe? Sarah shook her head. Jamie deserves better. Then there's option 3. We fight back. How? He has money, power, hired guns. So do we, Dominic interrupted. Victor left contingencies, offshore accounts Maxwell can't touch, documented evidence of his crimes, allies in strategic positions. But to access it all, we need to reach someone specific. Who? Victor's personal lawyer, Edward Chang, not connected to the firm handling the estate. He has everything we need, but he's in New York, maintaining a low profile since Victor's death. So we go to New York, Sarah said with determination. Not that simple. Maxwell will be watching airports, train stations, major highways, and you need training first. Training? For what? Dominic's gaze was steady. To protect yourself and Jamie when I can't. Sarah wanted to argue that she wasn't a fighter, just a nurse, but Jamie's safety outweighed her doubts. What kind of training? Basic self-defense, weapons familiarization, situational awareness, emergency protocols. He assessed her with a professional eye. You're already observant and level-headed under pressure. That's a good start. How long will this take? At least a week, maybe 2. We need to let things cool down anyway, make Maxwell think you've gone to ground. Sarah nodded slowly, processing everything. There's one thing I don't understand. Why are you doing all this? Victor is gone. Your obligation ended with him. Dominic was silent for a long moment. I made a promise, he finally said, to protect his son. A blood oath, you said. What does that actually mean? In my family, it means your word is your life. Break it, you're as good as dead. Something vulnerable flickered across his face. Victor gave me a second chance when no one else would. I owe him everything. Before Sarah could respond, Jamie approached with a drawing. Look what I made, Mommy. Sarah smiled, examining the colorful scribbles. It's beautiful, sweetie. What is it? It's us. See? That's you, that's me, and that's Mr. Dom protecting us from the bad guys. Jamie pointed to 3 stick figures, one notably larger with what appeared to be a stick in his hand. Sarah's eyes met Dominic's over Jamie's head. Something unspoken passed between them, an acknowledgement that whatever their differences, Jamie's safety united them. It's a masterpiece, Dominic said solemnly, earning a beaming smile from Jamie. Can we see the treehouse now? Jamie asked hopefully. Dominic looked to Sarah for permission. After a moment, she nodded. Stay where I can see you both from the porch. As Dominic led Jamie outside, pointing out the structure nestled in a large oak tree, Sarah watched from the cabin doorway. The contrast was striking, her small, innocent son chattering excitedly beside this dangerous man whose hands had likely ended lives. Yet Dominic showed unexpected patience, even gentleness, as he helped Jamie climb the first few rungs of the ladder. Training began that afternoon. While Jamie napped, Dominic showed Sarah basic self-defense moves in the cleared space of the living room. I don't want to hurt anyone, Sarah protested as he positioned her hands for a throat strike. This isn't about wanting, Dominic replied evenly. It's about staying alive when someone else wants you dead. Sarah practiced reluctantly at first, then with growing determination as she imagined threats to Jamie. By dinner time, her muscles ached, but she felt a new sense of capability. Tomorrow we'll start with firearms, Dominic stated as they cleaned up after the meal. I've never fired a gun in my life, Sarah admitted. Then you'll learn. That night, after putting Jamie to bed, Sarah found Dominic on the porch, staring into the darkness. She wrapped a blanket around her shoulders against the mountain chill and joined him. You were good with him today, she observed. I wouldn't have expected that. Dominic's profile remained stoic in the moonlight. Kids are straightforward, no hidden agendas. You don't strike me as someone who spends much time with children. I don't. Yet Jamie already adores you. Mr. Dom this and Mr. Dom that all evening. A ghost of a smile touched Dominic's lips. He's a good kid. Yes, he is. Sarah hugged the blanket tighter. I'm terrified of failing him. You won't. How can you be so sure? Dominic turned to face her. Because I've seen enough parents to know the difference between those who die for their children and those who wouldn't. You're the former. Sarah was moved by the simple confidence in his assessment. Thank you. They stood in companionable silence for a while, listening to the night sounds of the forest. Victor never stopped loving you, you know, Dominic said suddenly. He kept a photo of you in his desk, said you were the only real thing in his life. Sarah closed her eyes, unexpected tears threatening. I wish I could have known the real him. You did, Dominic assured her. The man you knew was Victor without the baggage, without the name. That was his true self. As days passed, a routine developed. Mornings were for physical training, self-defense, weapons practice, Sarah progressing from terrified to competent with Dominic's patient instruction, and tactical awareness drills. Afternoons included playtime for Jamie, often with both adults participating in his imaginative games. Evenings brought strategy discussions after Jamie was asleep. By the 5th day, Sarah could field strip and reassemble a handgun, break free from various holds, and had memorized emergency protocols for different scenarios. Despite the serious nature of their preparation, she found herself relaxing in Dominic's presence, even enjoying his dry humor that emerged in rare moments. For his part, Dominic seemed to soften incrementally. He still maintained vigilant security checks and kept his emotions largely guarded, but Sarah noticed how his expression changed when Jamie showed him treasures found in the woods, or asked endless questions about the stars at night. On the 6th night, a thunderstorm woke Jamie with a terrified scream. Sarah rushed to his side, but he was inconsolable, crying about the loud monster in the sky. To her surprise, Dominic appeared in the doorway with a flashlight and a deck of cards. My grandfather taught me a trick, he explained, sitting on the edge of the bed. For every thunderboom, we build one card higher on our tower. By morning, we've turned the monster's noise into something amazing. Jamie's sobs quieted as Dominic demonstrated, carefully balancing 2 cards together. Want to try? Over the next hour, as thunder continued to roll across the mountains, Jamie's fear transformed into determination to build the tallest card tower possible. Sarah watched from a chair in the corner, touched by Dominic's unexpected kindness. When Jamie finally fell back asleep between 2 consecutive thunderclaps, Both adults quietly slipped from the room. "Where did you really learn that trick?" Sarah asked as they returned to the living room. "My grandfather," Dominic answered truthfully, "before he went to prison. One of the few good memories I have. You don't talk about your past much. Not much worth talking about." "I disagree," Sarah said gently. "Whatever happened before, look what you became. Someone who protects instead of hurts. Someone who helps a frightened child through a storm." Dominic seemed uncomfortable with her assessment. "I'm not a good man, Sarah. I've done things. I know. But people can change. You're proof of that." Their eyes held for a long moment before Dominic looked away. "We should get some sleep. Training continues at dawn." The next day brought an unexpected development. While Dominic checked the perimeter after lunch, Jamie approached Sarah with a serious expression. "Mommy, is Mr. Dom going to be my new daddy?" Sarah nearly dropped the plate she was washing. "What? No, sweetie. Why would you think that?" Jamie shrugged. "Billy at daycare got a new daddy when his old daddy went to heaven. You said my daddy went to heaven too. It's not quite the same situation, Jamie. But Mr. Dom takes care of us like a daddy. And he looks at you the way Mr. Lopez looks at Mrs. Broskett." "Lopez." Sarah felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Jamie, Mr. Dom is helping us because it's his job. He said we're his family now." Jamie stated matter-of-factly. "I heard him on the phone." "When was this?" "Yesterday when I was supposed to be napping. He was talking quiet, but I heard him say, 'They're my family now.'" Sarah stored this information away, unsure what to make of it. Dominic had never indicated any personal connection beyond his obligation to Victor. That evening, while Jamie was engrossed in a picture book, Sarah approached Dominic as he cleaned his weapons at the kitchen table. "Who did you call yesterday?" His hands paused momentarily before continuing their methodical work. "An old contact, checking if Maxwell's men have tracked us." "And have they?" "Not yet, but they're searching the right geographic area now. We need to move within 3 days." Sarah nodded, then asked casually, "Jamie mentioned overhearing your call. Said you referred to us as your family." Dominic's jaw tightened. The contact wanted assurance I wasn't acting against Blackwood interests for money. Family obligation is something they understand. So it was just a convenient explanation. "Yes." His reply came too quickly, his focus too intently on the weapon parts before him. Sarah decided not to push further, but the conversation left her wondering about the complex man who had become their protector. Despite his dangerous exterior and shadowed past, she'd glimpsed something genuine beneath, something worth trusting. On the morning of the 9th day, Dominic received a call that visibly concerned him. His conversation was terse, mostly single-word responses, but his expression grew increasingly grim. "What's wrong?" Sarah asked when he ended the call. "Maxwell's men found Winters. He's in critical condition." Sarah gasped. "The attorney? Will he survive?" "Unknown. But before they got to him, he managed to contact Chang. Our timeline just accelerated." "How soon do we leave?" "Tomorrow at dawn. They'll be watching main roads, so we'll take logging trails and back routes. 3-day journey if we're careful." Sarah nodded, trying to project confidence she didn't entirely feel. "I'll start packing." As she gathered their belongings, she heard Dominic outside with Jamie, showing him how to identify animal tracks in the dirt. The boys' delighted laughter floated through the open window, a moment of normalcy amid their extraordinary circumstances. That night, after Jamie was asleep, Dominic and Sarah sat at the kitchen table reviewing maps and contingency plans. The atmosphere between them had changed over their days together. A tentative trust had formed, perhaps even the beginning of friendship. "If we get separated," Dominic instructed, "take this." He pushed a small flip phone toward her. "It has one number programmed. A woman named Elena will answer. Tell her Dominic sent me to the garden. She'll help you." "Who is she?" A shadow crossed his face. "Someone from my past who owes me. She runs an underground network for people who need to disappear." "Is she dangerous?" Sarah asked, thinking of Jamie. "Yes," Dominic answered honestly, "but not to you. Not if you use those exact words." Sarah pocketed the phone, then met his gaze directly. "I need to ask you something important. Go ahead. If anything happens to me, will you keep Jamie safe? Not just as a duty to Victor, but because I care about him," Dominic finished. "Yes, I'd protect him with my life, Sarah. You have my word." Relief softened her features. "Thank you." Something changed in Dominic's expression, a vulnerability she hadn't seen before. "There's something you should know before tomorrow." "What is it?" "I haven't been entirely honest about Victor's death." Sarah tensed. "What do you mean?" "I was supposed to be with him that night on the yacht. Standard security protocol. But I had food poisoning, couldn't make it." Self-recrimination laced his words. "If I'd been there, you might be dead too," Sarah interrupted gently. "Maybe, but Victor might still be alive. Jamie might have had a chance to know his father." Sarah reached across the table, touching his hand briefly. "You can't know that. What I do know is that I failed him. I won't fail his son." The raw emotion in his voice moved her. This was no longer just an oath to a former employer. Dominic had come to care deeply for Jamie, and perhaps for her as well. We should get some rest, Sarah suggested, feeling suddenly aware of the tension between them. Big day tomorrow, Dominic nodded, withdrawing his hand. I'll take first watch. Get some sleep. As Sarah settled beside Jamie in the bedroom, her mind swirled with conflicting thoughts. In just over a week, Dominic Reyes had transformed from a frightening stranger to someone she trusted with her life, with her son's life. Whatever happened tomorrow, that truth remained. Sarah woke to Dominic's hand covering her mouth, his finger to his lips, signaling silence. Moonlight filtered through the curtains, illuminating his tense expression. "We have company," he whispered, removing his hand. 3 vehicles approaching. "Get Jamie ready." Quietly, fear surged through her, but Sarah pushed it aside, focusing on the training from the past week. She nodded and moved to wake Jamie gently. "Hey, sweetie," she whispered. "We need to play a special game. The quiet adventure game, remember?" Jamie rubbed his eyes but nodded solemnly. They had practiced this game several times. Jamie knew to stay silent and follow instructions without question. Dominic returned with her emergency bag and a small backpack for Jamie. "They're setting up a perimeter. We need to move to the safe room now." Sarah quickly helped Jamie into shoes and a warm jacket, grateful they'd slept in their clothes as Dominic had suggested. Following Dominic through the dark cabin, they reached the kitchen where he moved the refrigerator with surprising ease, revealing a narrow door built into the wall. "Inside, quickly," he directed, ushering them through the opening into a small concrete room. The space contained a cot, supplies, a monitor displaying multiple camera feeds from around the property, and what appeared to be a tunnel entrance. "You've been prepared for this?" Sarah observed as Dominic secured the hidden door behind them. "Always." He moved to a weapons locker, efficiently selecting and checking firearms. "I counted 8 men, tactically positioned. They're professionals." "How did they find us?" Sarah asked, holding Jamie close as they sat on the cot. "Unknown. Could have tracked our supply run yesterday. Could be Maxwell expanding his search grid." Dominic handed her a loaded pistol. "Remember your training. Last resort only." Sarah took the weapon, trying to keep her hands steady. On the monitors, she could see dark figures moving through the trees surrounding the cabin, converging slowly. "What's the plan?" she asked, keeping her voice calm for Jamie's sake. "I'm going to create a diversion on the east side. Draw them away from the cabin. You'll take Jamie through the tunnel. It exits half a mile downhill, near the creek. Follow it south for 2 miles until you reach the old fire road. There's a vehicle hidden there, an old Jeep under a tarp. Keys are in the wheel well. You want us to split up?" Sarah couldn't hide her alarm. "Temporarily. I'll meet you at Checkpoint Alpha, the abandoned ranger station we discussed. If I'm not there by dawn, continue to Elena." "Dominic, this is the best chance for Jamie," he interrupted firmly, his eyes conveying what his words didn't. He was prepared to sacrifice himself if necessary. Sarah swallowed hard, then nodded. "Be careful." "Always am." He knelt to Jamie's level. "Hey buddy, you're going on that adventure with your mom now. Remember what we practiced?" Jamie nodded seriously. "Stay quiet and do what mommy says." "That's right. You're the man of the team while I'm gone, okay? Protect your mom for me. I promise, Mr. Dom." Jamie's small voice was resolute. Dominic surprised them both by pulling Jamie into a quick hug. When he straightened, his expression had returned to its professional detachment. "Wait for my signal on the monitor. When you see the flash on the east side, count to 30, then go." With that, he checked a final weapon, then disappeared through another hidden panel that Sarah hadn't even noticed. On the monitors, Sarah watched him move like a shadow through the cabin, positioning something at strategic points. Then he slipped outside, virtually invisible in the darkness, except when he crossed between camera angles. Minutes stretched painfully as Sarah watched the intruders draw closer to the cabin. Jamie sat silently beside her, his small hand clutching her sleeve, his eyes wide but unafraid. She realized with a pang that he trusted Dominic completely, perhaps even more than she did. Suddenly, the easternmost monitor showed a brilliant flash, followed by a series of smaller explosions. Diversion devices, Sarah realized, designed to sound like gunfire. She began counting aloud softly. 1, 2, 3. On the screens, most of the dark figures changed direction, moving toward the commotion. But 2 remained close to the cabin's west side, directly in the path they would need to take to reach the tunnel exit. 28, 29, 30. Sarah stood, helping Jamie up. "Time to go, sweetie. Remember, quiet as mice." The tunnel was low, ceilinged and narrow, requiring Sarah to hunch slightly. Jamie moved ahead of her, navigating the passage like it was another adventure game. The dirt floor had been packed firm, making their footsteps nearly soundless. After several minutes of careful progress, they reached the exit, a trapdoor overhead. Sarah listened intently before slowly pushing it open, relieved to find only darkness and the sound of crickets above. She emerged first, scanning their surroundings with the small flashlight Dominic had given her, then helped Jamie out. The creek gurgled nearby, its sound helping to mask their movements as they oriented themselves and began heading south as instructed. Jamie was impressively stoic, moving quietly and quickly beside her without complaint. Twice they stopped when Sarah thought she heard voices, crouching in undergrowth until she was certain it was safe to continue. They had covered perhaps a mile when gunfire erupted in the distance. Real gunfire this time, not diversionary devices. Sarah froze, her heart racing as she tried to determine the direction and distance. "Is Mr. Dom okay?" Jamie whispered, his first words since they'd entered the tunnel. "He's very good at his job," Sarah assured him, hoping it was true. "Let's keep moving. We need to reach the jeep." They pressed on through the forest, following the creek as it wound south. Sarah's nerves were stretched to breaking point. Every shadow potentially an enemy, every sound a threat. The pistol felt heavy in her jacket pocket, a last resort she prayed she wouldn't need. Finally, they reached the old fire road Dominic had described, little more than 2 dirt tracks through the trees. 100 yards east, just as he'd said, stood an ancient jeep covered with a camouflage tarp that blended with the surrounding foliage. Sarah helped Jamie into the passenger seat, then retrieved the keys from the wheel well and started the engine. It sputtered to life with a low rumble that seemed deafening in the night stillness. "Seatbelt," she reminded Jamie, securing her own before putting the vehicle in gear. They bumped slowly along the fire road, Sarah driving without headlights, using only the dim moonlight filtering through the trees to guide them. "Will Mr. Dom find us?" Jamie asked, clutching his ever-present stuffed elephant. "He will," Sarah said with more confidence than she felt. He promised. The abandoned ranger station appeared as a dark silhouette against the lightening pre-dawn sky. Sarah parked the jeep behind the building as planned and helped Jamie inside. The small structure was dusty but intact, with a single room containing a desk, chair, and what had once been a map display. "Now we wait," she told Jamie, setting up a small space for him with a blanket from her emergency bag. "Try to rest, sweetie." Jamie curled up obediently, exhaustion finally catching up with him. Sarah settled beside the grimy window, pistol ready, watching the approach to the station with anxious eyes. Dawn came and went with no sign of Dominic. Sarah's worry grew with each passing minute. Had he been caught? Injured? Killed? The thought sent a cold wave through her that had nothing to do with the morning chill. By mid-morning, she was fighting panic. According to the plan, they needed to be moving again by noon, with or without Dominic. Elena's location was a day's drive away, and they'd need to avoid main roads and checkpoints. Just as Sarah was gathering their meager belongings, preparing to leave, a sound outside froze her in place. Footsteps, slow and uneven. She positioned herself between the door and the still sleeping Jamie, raising the pistol with both hands as Dominic had taught her. The door creaked open, and Dominic staggered in, his face pallid, his left shoulder dark with blood. "Dominic!" Sarah lowered the gun immediately, rushing to support him as he swayed. "Are you both okay?" he asked, his voice strained. "We're fine, but you're not." She helped him to the desk chair. "What happened?" "Ambush at the cabin. 8 became 12. Got most of them, but 1 got lucky." He grimaced as she helped remove his jacket, revealing a bullet wound high on his shoulder. "This needs medical attention," Sarah stated, examining the injury with professional eyes. "No hospitals," Dominic said firmly. "They'll be watching, then I'll have to treat it myself." Sarah rummaged through her bag for the first aid kit she'd packed. It went through clean at least. "No exit wound means the bullet's still inside. I need to remove it," Dominic nodded grimly. "Do what you need to do." Sarah hesitated, glancing at Jamie's sleeping form. "I don't want him to see this. There's a supply closet in the back," Dominic said. "We'll move him there." Once Jamie was settled, still sleeping peacefully, Sarah returned to Dominic with the most sterile setup she could manage under the circumstances. She laid out alcohol wipes, gauze, tweezers, and a small sewing kit on a relatively clean bandana. "This will hurt," she warned, cutting away his blood-soaked shirt. "I don't have anything for the pain." "Not my first bullet," Dominic replied, his jaw set. "Just do it." Sarah took a deep breath, then began cleaning the wound. To his credit, Dominic barely flinched, though sweat beaded on his forehead as she probed for the bullet with sterilized tweezers. "Almost got it," she murmured, focusing intently. "There." The small metal slug made a dull sound as she dropped it onto the desk. Blood welled from the wound, but Sarah worked efficiently, applying pressure, then cleaning and finally stitching the entry wound closed with neat, professional sutures. "You're good at this," Dominic observed, his voice slightly hoarse from suppressed pain. "I was an ER nurse before pediatrics," Sarah explained, applying a pressure bandage. "Gunshot wounds weren't uncommon, unfortunately. Lucky for me." When she finished, Sarah helped him into a spare t-shirt from his go bag, which had been stashed at the ranger station previously. Only then did she realize how close he'd come to a fatal injury. The bullet had missed his heart by inches. "You could have died," she said quietly, the full reality of their situation hitting her anew. "But I didn't." His eyes met hers, something unspoken passing between them. "Thanks to you," a small voice interrupted the moment. "Mr. Dom, you came back." Jamie stood in the doorway, rubbing his eyes, his face lighting up at the sight of Dominic. He rushed forward, only to be intercepted by Sarah before he could launch himself at the injured man. "Careful, sweetie. Mr. Dom has an owie on his shoulder." "Did the bad men hurt you?" Jamie asked, his expression solemn. "Just a scratch," Dominic assured him, reaching out with his good arm to ruffle the boy's hair. "Nothing your mom couldn't fix." Jamie beamed at Sarah. "Mommy fixes everybody. She's the best fixer ever." "Yes, she is," Dominic agreed, his eyes holding Sarah's for a beat longer than necessary. They rested for several hours, allowing Dominic to regain some strength. Sarah changed his bandage once, relieved to see no signs of infection starting. By late afternoon, they agreed it was time to move on. Maxwell's men will be regrouping, searching the area more thoroughly, Dominic explained as they prepared to leave. "The Jeep is too recognizable now. We need a new vehicle." "From where?" "There's a small town 10 miles south. We can find something there." The drive was tense, with Sarah behind the wheel and Dominic scanning their surroundings vigilantly despite his injury. Jamie dozed in the back seat, remarkably adaptable to their constantly changing circumstances. At the outskirts of the town, little more than a crossroads with a gas station, diner, and small motel, Dominic directed Sarah to park behind an abandoned feed store. "Wait here," he instructed. "I'll be back within 30 minutes. "You're injured," Sarah protested. "Let me go instead. No offense to your new skills, but stealing a car isn't something I can teach in a week." He checked his weapon, then met her gaze. "If I'm not back in 30 minutes, call Elena and go." Before Sarah could argue further, he was gone, moving with surprising stealth despite his wounded shoulder. 28 minutes later, a dark blue sedan pulled up beside their hiding spot. Dominic emerged from the driver's side, handing Sarah a small bag. "Food, water, some clothes for Jamie from the general store," he explained. "Let's move." They transferred their essential belongings to the new vehicle, then abandoned the Jeep, covering it with branches and brush as best they could. The sedan was unremarkable, a mid-2000s Toyota that would attract no attention on the highways. As they drove away from the small town, Sarah turned to Dominic. "What now?" "Now we take the most direct route to Elena's that avoids major checkpoints. About 18 hours of driving, switching off to rest." Sarah nodded, settling in for the long journey. Beside her, Dominic checked the mirrors constantly, his vigilance never wavering despite his obvious pain and fatigue. Night fell as they crossed into the next state, Jamie long asleep in the back seat. They had stopped only for bathroom breaks and to switch drivers once, when Dominic admitted his shoulder was making it difficult to steer properly. "You should rest," Sarah suggested, noticing how Dominic kept shifting his position, clearly uncomfortable. "I can drive for several more hours. I'm fine." "You're not, but I admire the stubbornness." She smiled slightly. "At least recline the seat a bit. You took a bullet this morning, remember?" Reluctantly, Dominic adjusted his seat, though his eyes still scanned the road ahead and behind them with professional diligence. "Can I ask you something?" Sarah said after a while, keeping her voice low to avoid waking Jamie. "Depends on the question. What will you do after all this? If we succeed, I mean." Dominic was quiet for so long that Sarah thought he might not answer. When he did, his voice had an unusual vulnerability. "I haven't thought that far ahead." "Maybe you should," she suggested gently. "There could be a life beyond this for you too." "What kind of life?" "I'm a weapon, Sarah. It's all I know how to be." "That's not true," she countered. "I've seen you with Jamie. You're patient, kind, protective. Those aren't the qualities of just a weapon." Dominic shifted uncomfortably, and Sarah couldn't tell if it was from his wound or her words. "Victor saw it too," she continued. "That's why he gave you a chance, isn't it? He saw past what you'd been trained to be." "Maybe," Dominic conceded. "Or maybe he just needed someone who understood how Maxwell operated." "I don't believe that, and I don't think you do either." Their conversation lapsed into silence, but it felt different than before, less guarded, more contemplative. Something was changing between them, a tentative trust evolving into something deeper. Dawn was breaking when they reached the outskirts of Harrington, the small city where Elena operated. They stopped at a rest area to freshen up and prepare for the meeting. "Elena is complicated," Dominic explained as Sarah helped change his bandage in the privacy of the family restroom. "She runs a network that helps people disappear, get new identities, start over, mostly abused women and children, occasionally witnesses who the system failed to protect." "How do you know her?" Sarah asked, carefully cleaning around his stitches. A shadow crossed his face. "We were together, before Victor, when I worked for Maxwell." "Oh," Sarah tried to keep her expression neutral. "And now?" "We haven't spoken in 6 years. Not since I switched sides." He winced slightly as she applied fresh gauze. "She might help us for old time's sake. Or she might slam the door in my face. You said she owes you." "I helped her escape from Maxwell when he learned she was skimming clients." The memory seemed to pain him more than his wound. Took a beating for it, but she got away clean. Sarah finished securing the bandage, her touch lingering a moment longer than necessary. Thank you for telling me. Dominic met her eyes. If this goes sideways, you still have the phone I gave you. The code phrase will get Jamie to safety, even if I can't. It won't come to that, Sarah said firmly. We're all getting through this. Jamie woke as they re-entered the car, groggy but cheerful as always. Are we there yet? Almost, buddy, Dominic answered, something like affection softening his features. Just a few more miles. They drove to an industrial area on the city's edge, eventually stopping before a nondescript warehouse with faded signage for a defunct shipping company. Dominic parked in the back, near a small door with a sophisticated surveillance camera mounted above. Let me do the talking, he instructed as they approached. Elena's people are jumpy by necessity. The door opened before they reached it, revealing a tall woman with close-cropped silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Well, Dominic Reyes back from the dead. Hello, Elena. Dominic's posture had subtly changed, more alert, slightly defensive. Elena's gaze shifted to Sarah and Jamie, assessing them with cool efficiency. This must be Victor's boy. The resemblance is there, around the eyes. We need your help, Dominic stated without preamble. Of course you do. You wouldn't be here otherwise. Elena stepped aside. Come in before someone sees you. The warehouse interior was surprisingly modern, sections partitioned into living spaces, work areas with computers and equipment, and what appeared to be a small medical facility. People moved about purposefully, some eyeing the newcomers with suspicion. Elena led them to a private office with comfortable seating. Sit. You look like hell, Dom. Bullet? He explained simply. Sarah patched me up. So I see. Elena's piercing gaze turned to Sarah. Nurse, right? It shows in the stitching. Sarah nodded, somewhat unnerved by the woman's perceptiveness. The boy can rest through there, Elena continued, gesturing to a small adjoining room with a sofa. Mitzi will bring him something to eat and some toys. Once Jamie was settled with a kindly older woman who produced cookies and a tablet loaded with games, Elena closed the door and turned to business. Maxwell Blackwood has a bounty out on all three of you. 2 million, dead or alive, higher if the boy is unharmed. Dominic didn't seem surprised. We need to get to Edward Chang in New York. Victor's personal lawyer? He's gone to ground. Maxwell's people hit his office last week. Is he alive? Sarah asked anxiously. For now, but he's moving constantly. Elena leaned back in her chair, studying them. What's so important about Chang? He has evidence against Maxwell, enough to bring him down legally and ensure Jamie's inheritance is protected, Dominic explained. And he has access to funds Maxwell can't touch. Elena considered this. I might be able to arrange a meeting, but not here. You'll need to come to the Continental. The hotel? Dominic frowned. It's too exposed. It's neutral ground. Even Maxwell respects the Continental's rules. No business conducted on the premises. Chang will feel safe enough to meet you there. Sarah looked between them, confused. What is this place? A hotel with special clientele and strict protocols, Dominic explained. Certain professionals use it as neutral territory. He means assassins, mercenaries, and the occasional spy, Elena clarified bluntly. Your boyfriend here was once a regular. He's not Sarah began, then stopped herself. When can we meet Chang? Tomorrow night, room 514. Elena tapped a pattern on her desk, and a hidden drawer slid open. She removed 3 key cards. These will get you in through the service entrance. I've reserved the room under a corporate alias. Dominic took the cards. We'll need weapons. Already arranged. Check the bathroom vent in the room. Elena's expression softened marginally as she glanced toward the room where Jamie played. The boy is innocent in all this. Don't get him killed. That's why we're here, Sarah said firmly. To end this threat to him permanently. Elena studied her with newfound respect. You've got spine. Good. You'll need it. She turned to Dominic. You can rest here until tomorrow. I'll have the doctor look at that shoulder. Thank you, Dominic said quietly. Don't thank me yet, Elena replied. If Maxwell tracks you here, our arrangement is null and void. Self-preservation trumps old debts. With that candid warning, she left them alone in the office. Sarah exhaled slowly, releasing tension she hadn't realized she was holding. She seems intense, she observed. A ghost of a smile touched Dominic's lips. That's putting it mildly. Were you really? Sarah trailed off, unsure how to phrase the question delicately. Together? Yes. A lifetime ago. Dominic's expression closed again. Elena was running from an abusive husband when Maxwell's organization found her. She saw an opportunity and took it. I respected her survival instinct. And now? Now she's built something important, a network that saves lives. In that way, she and I ended up on similar paths, trying to balance the scales for past wrongs. Sarah found herself reaching for his hand, surprising both of them. You've already saved 2 lives. That counts for something. Dominic looked down at their joined hands, then back to her face. Something vulnerable and uncertain crossed his features, an expression Sarah had never seen on him before. For a moment, it seemed he might say something significant, but the door opened as Elena's doctor arrived to examine his wound. The moment passed, but something had shifted between them, an acknowledgement of feelings neither was ready to name but could no longer deny. They spent the rest of the day resting, eating proper meals, and preparing for the next stage of their journey. Jamie was delighted by the new environment and the attention from Elena's staff, who seemed to have a soft spot for children. That night, as Jamie slept peacefully in a small bed Elena had arranged, Sarah found Dominic on a balcony overlooking the warehouse floor. His profile was pensive in the dim light. "Penny for your thoughts," she said, joining him at the railing. "Just considering angles, contingencies," he replied. "Tomorrow's meeting is crucial. And dangerous? Potentially. The Continental is neutral ground, but getting there and back won't be. Maxwell has eyes everywhere in that city." Sarah nodded, processing this. "Jamie and I have come to rely on you, you know. More than I expected." Dominic's gaze remained on the warehouse activity below. "I've come to care about what happens to you both, more than I should." The admission clearly cost him, trained as he was to maintain emotional distance. Sarah took a risk and moved closer, her shoulder touching his. "Is caring really such a bad thing? In my experience, usually." But he didn't move away from her touch. "People I care about tend to get hurt. Or maybe they're safer because you care," she countered gently. "Jamie adores you. And I." She hesitated. "I trust you. Completely. I never thought I'd say that to anyone again after Victor disappeared." Dominic finally turned to face her, his expression raw with conflicting emotions. "Sarah, you don't have to say anything," she interrupted. "I just wanted you to know that whatever happens tomorrow, these past 2 weeks have changed me. Changed us both, I think." Their eyes held for a long moment, the air between them charged with unspoken possibilities. Then Jamie's voice called sleepily from inside, breaking the spell. "Mommy, where are you?" "Coming, sweetie," Sarah called back, lingering just a moment longer beside Dominic before returning inside. As she settled Jamie back to sleep, Sarah's mind swirled with complex feelings. Amidst all the danger and uncertainty, something unexpected had bloomed, a connection to this complicated, damaged man who had become their protector, their companion, and perhaps something more. Tomorrow would bring them face to face with their best chance of defeating Maxwell and securing Jamie's future. But it would also bring new dangers, new challenges to overcome. Sarah only hoped that whatever awaited them at the Continental, they would face it together. Morning brought a flurry of preparations. Elena's people provided them with new clothes, identification, and a nondescript sedan with clean plates. Dominic's shoulder had been professionally redressed, and while he was still in pain, his movement had improved. "The Continental is in Midtown," Elena explained, spreading a map on the table before them. "You'll enter through this service entrance on 43rd Street. The staff are discreet. They won't ask questions or remember faces." Sarah listened intently while helping Jamie with his breakfast. They had explained to him that they were going to a special hotel to meet someone who would help them, framing it as another adventure. Jamie seemed to accept this easily, his resilience continuing to amaze Sarah. "What about extraction?" Dominic asked, studying the map. "Assuming the meeting goes as planned. I've arranged a safe house in Queens. You can stay there until Chang processes whatever documents you need." Elena handed him a key with an address tag. "After that, you're on your own." "Fair enough," Dominic agreed. "We've imposed on you enough." Elena's eyes softened momentarily as she looked at Jamie. The boy has Victor's smile. It's disconcerting. "Did you know Victor well?" Sarah asked. "We had mutual interests occasionally. He was one of the few Blackwoods with a conscience." Elena straightened, her professional demeanor returning. "You should leave before noon. Avoid major highways until you're past Trenton." The goodbyes were brief, with Elena maintaining her cool efficiency. Only when she shook Dominic's hand did a hint of their shared history surface, a look that passed between them speaking of old wounds, respect, and closure. "Try not to get shot again," Elena told him dryly. "You're getting too old for it." "Thanks for the vote of confidence," Dominic replied with equal dryness. "And you," Elena said to Sarah, "keep that spine of steel. You'll need it to handle him." Sarah smiled despite herself. "I'm working on it." The drive to New York took longer than expected due to their cautious route. By the time they approached the city, dusk was settling over the skyline, painting the buildings in hues of orange and purple. "Pretty lights," Jamie exclaimed from the back seat, pointing at the illuminated skyscrapers. "Yes, they are," Sarah agreed, trying to project calm as tension built inside her. Tonight could end their nightmare or make it infinitely worse. Dominic navigated the busy streets with practiced ease, eventually turning into an alley behind an imposing stone building. The service entrance was unmarked but guarded by a well-dressed man who nodded slightly at the sight of their key cards. "5th floor," was all he said as he granted them access to a service elevator. The Continental's elegance was subtle but unmistakable, Rich woods, subdued lighting, plush carpets that muffled their footsteps. They encountered no one in the service corridor, making their way directly to room 514 as instructed. Dominic entered first, scanning the suite thoroughly before allowing Sarah and Jamie to follow. The room was spacious and luxurious, with a separate bedroom, living area, and a stunning view of the city. Wow! Jamie ran to the window, pressing his hands against the glass. We're so high up. Stay away from the windows, buddy, Dominic directed gently. Remember our rule about not being seen? Jamie nodded and moved away obediently. Is this where the helper man lives? No, he's coming to meet us here, Sarah explained, setting down their small bag of belongings. Are you hungry? We can order room service. While Sarah helped Jamie select food from the menu, Dominic checked the bathroom vent as Elena had instructed. He returned with a small case containing 2 handguns and ammunition, which he discreetly stored in various locations around the suite for quick access if needed. After a room service dinner that delighted Jamie with its fancy presentation, Sarah got him ready for bed in the suite's second bedroom. By the time she emerged, closing the door gently behind her, Dominic was positioned by the main door, checking his watch. Chang should be here within the hour, he said. Elena's message said 9 p.m. Sarah nodded, nerves making her restless. She paced the living area, occasionally glancing out at the glittering city below. It feels strange to be in such a normal, luxurious place after everything we've been through. The Continental specializes in providing normalcy amidst chaos, Dominic observed. It's part of its appeal. To assassins and mercenaries, Sarah said, recalling Elena's blunt description. And occasionally to people like us, caught in something beyond their control, needing neutral ground. The subtle knock at exactly 9 p.m. made them both tense. Dominic moved to the door, gun ready but concealed, while Sarah positioned herself protectively near Jamie's room. Identity? Dominic called quietly. Edward Chang, representing the Blackwood estate, came the response. Dominic checked the peephole, then opened the door to admit a slight, middle-aged Asian man in an impeccable suit, carrying a slim briefcase. His expression was professionally neutral, though his eyes betrayed tension. Ms. Collins? He greeted Sarah with a small bow. I've been looking forward to meeting you. Victor spoke highly of you. Thank you for coming, Sarah replied. We understand the risk you're taking. Calculated risk, Chang corrected, setting his briefcase on the table. This hotel observes strict neutrality. Even Maxwell wouldn't violate that tradition. Bad for business. He opened the briefcase efficiently, removing several folders and a laptop. I've prepared everything as Victor instructed in his contingency plan. Legal documents transferring guardianship of Jamie to you exclusively. Financial arrangements Maxwell cannot touch, and, most importantly, evidence. What kind of evidence? Dominic asked, still standing guard near the door. Financial records proving Maxwell embezzled from Blackwood Technologies for years. Communications indicating his involvement in Victor's death. Testimony from former associates implicating him in numerous crimes. Chang's expression was grim, enough to put him away for several lifetimes. Sarah felt a surge of hope. So we can go to the authorities? Not directly. Maxwell has too many people in his pocket. Chang turned the laptop toward them, entering a complex password. That's why Victor created this, a dead man's switch. If anything happened to him, these files would be released to specific federal agencies, investigative journalists, and international law enforcement simultaneously. Why hasn't it been triggered already? Dominic asked. Because Victor wanted Jamie to be secure first, Chang explained. He feared that in the chaos following Maxwell's arrest, other elements of the Blackwood extended family might target Jamie. The switch includes a final provision, full legal protection for Jamie and financial independence. Sarah studied the screen, seeing folders labeled with various agencies and news organizations. So once we activate this, Maxwell's empire collapses within hours, Chang confirmed. But you'll need to be at a secure location first. I've arranged a safe house in Canada. Once there, I can transfer control of Jamie's trusts to you completely. Hope surged through Sarah. This nightmare could finally end. Jamie would be safe, free to grow up without the shadow of Maxwell Blackwood hanging over him. How soon can we leave? She asked. Tonight. I have transportation waiting, Chang began, but was interrupted by a sharp knock at the door. Dominic immediately signaled for silence, moving to the door with his weapon ready. We're not expecting anyone else. Room service, called a voice that made Chang visibly pale. I didn't order anything else, Sarah whispered. Chang's hand moved to his jacket, but Dominic was faster, grabbing the man's wrist before he could draw whatever weapon he carried. You sold us out, Dominic hissed, his expression murderous. They have my family, Chang whispered, terror in his eyes. I had no choice. The pounding on the door grew louder. Continental security, open up. Sarah was already moving, grabbing the laptop and rushing to Jamie's room. The boy was awake, startled by the commotion. We need to go, sweetie, she said urgently, helping him into his shoes. Quick adventure time. Dominic appeared in the doorway, dragging a restrained Chang with him. Balcony. Now. There's a fire escape. Sarah lifted Jamie, clutching the laptop to her chest as they hurried to the balcony door. Behind them, the suite's main door splintered under heavy force. Go, Dominic ordered, shoving Chang ahead of him. Move. The fire escape was old but sturdy, zigzagging down the side of the building. Sarah went first with Jamie, her heart pounding as she navigated the metal steps. Chang followed, then Dominic, who paused to fire 2 shots back into the room, buying them precious seconds. They had descended 3 floors when gunfire erupted above them, bullets pinging off metal near their heads. Jamie whimpered in fear, burying his face against Sarah's shoulder. Keep moving, Dominic urged, returning fire sparingly. At the 2nd floor, disaster struck. Chang, whether from fear or deliberate action, stumbled into Sarah. She lost her balance, nearly dropping Jamie as she grabbed the railing with her free hand. The laptop slipped from her grasp, clattering down the remaining stairs to the alley below. The evidence, she cried. Leave it, Dominic commanded, grabbing her arm to steady her. We need to move. They reached the alley just as more of Maxwell's men appeared at both ends. Trapped. This way, Chang suddenly said, pulling open a service door that led into the hotel's kitchen. They rushed through, startling staff who scattered at the sight of their weapons. The garage connects to the neighboring building, Chang explained as they ran through corridors. We can exit there. Why are you helping us now? Sarah demanded between breaths, still carrying Jamie. I truly didn't want to betray you, Chang insisted. Maxwell threatened my grandchildren, but I can't have another child's death on my conscience. They burst into the hotel's underground garage, weaving between parked vehicles toward a distant exit sign. Sarah's arms ached from carrying Jamie, but adrenaline kept her moving forward. There's our chance. Dominic pointed to a luxury sedan with a valet just entering it. With swift efficiency, he intercepted the startled attendant, commandeered the vehicle, and gestured for Sarah and Jamie to get in. What about Chang? Sarah asked, securing Jamie in the back seat. Dominic's expression was cold. He stays. We can't trust him. Please, Chang begged. They'll kill me. You nearly got us killed, Dominic countered. Why should I care? Because I can still help you, Chang insisted desperately. I memorized the access codes for Victor's contingency plan. The laptop was just one delivery method. Dominic hesitated, then made a split-second decision. Get in. But if you try anything, I won't, Chang promised, scrambling into the back seat beside Jamie. They sped out of the garage just as Maxwell's men emerged from the hotel entrance. Dominic drove with controlled aggression, weaving through Manhattan traffic with expertise that suggested years of evasive driving experience. Where now? Sarah asked, checking on Jamie in the back seat. The boy was frightened but holding it together remarkably well, his small hand clutching his elephant tightly. Not the safe house in Queens, Dominic stated grimly. If Chang betrayed us once, that location is compromised too. I had no choice, Chang repeated miserably. But I can make it right. Take me to an internet cafe, somewhere public. I can activate Victor's protocols remotely. And we should trust you. Why? Dominic's tone was dangerous. Because I loved Victor like a brother, Chang said quietly. I've served the Blackwood family for 30 years, but Victor was the only one who treated me with respect. I failed him once. I won't do it again. Sarah studied the man, trying to gauge his sincerity. If you're lying to us, I'm not, Chang insisted. Please, let me help Jamie as I promised his father I would. Dominic's eyes met Sarah's in the rearview mirror, silently asking her opinion. After a moment, she nodded slightly. They had few options left. Midtown Library, Dominic decided. Public enough for safety. Computers available, multiple exits. They abandoned the luxury sedan several blocks from the library, continuing on foot to avoid being tracked by the vehicle. Sarah carried Jamie despite her exhaustion, refusing Dominic's offer to take him. The Grand Library was closing soon, but they slipped in among the last patrons. Chang led them to a computer station in a quiet corner, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he accessed secure servers and entered complex passwords. Victor created redundancies, he explained quietly as he worked. The evidence exists in multiple forms, multiple locations. This will trigger simultaneous release to all the designated recipients. Sarah watched the screen, her heart racing. This was it, their chance to end Maxwell's threat permanently. How long until it takes effect? She asked. The information will be delivered instantly, but legal action will take time, Chang admitted. Hours, maybe days before arrest warrants are issued. We still need somewhere safe until then, Dominic pointed out. I have a property upstate, Chang offered. A cabin by a lake. Not even my family knows about it. You could stay there until this plays out. Dominic's expression remained skeptical. And why would you help us now? Penance, Chang said simply. And because Victor would want me to. After a moment's consideration, Dominic nodded. We'll take the address, but you're coming with us. Chang didn't argue, finishing his work on the computer and then carefully erasing all traces of their activity. It's done. Maxwell Blackwood's empire is about to crumble. They left the library separately to avoid attention. Chang first, followed by Dominic, with Sarah and Jamie last. Outside, the city continued its normal evening rhythm, oblivious to the information bomb that had just been launched from within its walls. Their rendezvous point was a small park 2 blocks away. As Sarah approached with Jamie, she spotted Dominic waiting by a bench, but Chang was nowhere to be seen. "Where is he?" she asked, setting Jamie down but keeping a firm hold on his hand. "Gone," Dominic replied grimly. "Left us the cabin keys and address, then disappeared. Said it was safer for everyone this way." "Do you believe him? About triggering Victor's evidence?" "We'll know soon enough. For now, we need to get to that cabin before Maxwell's men regroup." They acquired another vehicle, legitimately this time, a used station wagon purchased with cash from a lot with minimal paperwork requirements. As they drove north out of the city, Jamie finally succumbed to exhaustion, falling asleep across the back seat. "Do you think it's really over?" Sarah asked quietly, watching the city lights recede behind them. "Not yet," Dominic answered honestly. "But soon. If Chang was telling the truth, Maxwell will be fighting for his freedom by morning, too busy to chase us. And if he wasn't, then we keep running, keep fighting." Dominic's hand found hers in the darkness. "I meant what I said before. I'll protect Jamie with my life." "I know you will," Sarah said softly. "But I don't want it to come to that. I don't want to lose you." The admission hung between them, weighted with meaning neither was ready to fully explore. Dominic's fingers tightened around hers briefly, then returned to the steering wheel. "Get some rest," he suggested. "We've got a long drive ahead." Chang's cabin proved to be real, a charming rustic property on a secluded lake about 3 hours north of the city. They arrived well after midnight, exhausted but vigilant as Dominic performed a thorough check of the premises before allowing Sarah to bring Jamie inside. The interior was simple but comfortable, with 2 bedrooms, a well-stocked kitchen, and a living area centered around a stone fireplace. Sarah settled Jamie in one bedroom, amazed at how he could sleep through being carried from car to bed. When she emerged, Dominic was securing the perimeter, checking windows and doors methodically. "It seems clean," he reported. "No signs of surveillance or traps." "So we wait?" Sarah asked, sinking onto the sofa, the weight of their ordeal finally catching up with her. "We wait," Dominic confirmed, joining her after a moment's hesitation. "And we monitor the news. If Chang activated Victor's evidence, it should start making waves by morning." They sat in companionable silence, both too wired to sleep despite their exhaustion. The cabin creaked and settled around them, the only other sound the gentle lapping of lake water outside. "If this works," Sarah said eventually, "what happens next? You and Jamie will be safe. The trust will be secured in your name as guardian. You can go anywhere, do anything. And you?" She pressed gently, Dominic's gaze fixed on the unlit fireplace. "My job will be done." "Is that all this is to you? A job?" "It started that way," he admitted. "A promise to Victor, an obligation to fulfill. And now?" Dominic turned to face her, vulnerability evident in his usually guarded expression. "Now it's more, much more." Sarah moved closer, her hand finding his. "Jamie asked if you were going to be his new daddy. Did you know that?" Surprise registered on Dominic's face. "What did you tell him?" "I said no, that you were helping us because it was your job." Sarah held his gaze steadily. "But I'm not sure that's true anymore, is it?" "Sarah." Dominic's voice held a warning, but he didn't pull away. "I'm not father material. I'm not even good man material." "I disagree," she said softly. "I've seen you with Jamie. I've seen who you really are beneath all that armor." Victor saw it too. Victor was an optimist, Dominic countered, but something in his expression was changing, softening. "Maybe he just saw the truth," Sarah suggested. "That you're more than your past, that you're capable of love." The word hung between them, charged with possibility. Dominic's free hand moved hesitantly to her face, fingers gently tracing her cheek. "I don't know how to do this," he confessed. "Normal life, family. It's foreign territory. We could learn together," Sarah offered, leaning slightly into his touch. "If you wanted to." The moment stretched between them, taut with unspoken feelings. Then, with gentle deliberation, Dominic closed the distance between them. The kiss was tentative at first, then deepening as Sarah responded, her arms circling his neck, drawing him closer. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Dominic rested his forehead against hers. "I want to," he whispered. "God help me. I want to try." Sarah smiled, her heart lighter than it had been in weeks despite their uncertain situation. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Morning brought unexpected news. Sarah woke to find Dominic intensely focused on a laptop he must have found in the cabin, scrolling through news websites. "What is it?" she asked, noting his serious expression. "Chang came through," he replied, turning the screen toward her. Look, headlines scrolled across major news outlets. Blackwood Technologies CEO linked to fraud, murder, federal raid at Blackwood Mansion, tech giant embroiled in criminal conspiracy. It's working, Sarah breathed, a surge of hope rising in her chest. It's really happening. Maxwell was taken in for questioning at dawn, Dominic added. His assets are frozen pending investigation. Sarah sank into the chair beside him, overwhelmed by relief. Is it over? Are we safe? Not completely, Dominic cautioned. Maxwell still has loyalists who might come after Jamie as leverage. We should stay here, off the grid, until the dust settles. As if summoned by their conversation, Jamie appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes sleepily. Mommy? Mr. Dom? Where are we? At a special lake house, Sarah explained, opening her arms to him. We might stay here for a little vacation. Would you like that? Jamie nodded eagerly, climbing onto her lap. Can we go swimming? Maybe soon, Dominic said, ruffling the boy's hair affectionately. First breakfast. I think I saw pancake mix in the kitchen. The domesticity of the moment struck Sarah profoundly. This dangerous man offering to make pancakes, her son comfortable in their strange new surroundings, the three of them forming an unexpected unit amid extraordinary circumstances. Days passed in relative peace at the lakeside cabin. They remained vigilant, but allowed themselves small pleasures, fishing off the dock, short walks in the surrounding woods, evenings spent playing board games found in a cabin closet. Jamie flourished in the stability, his nightmares about bad men gradually subsiding. Dominic and Sarah's relationship evolved cautiously, with stolen moments of affection when Jamie was asleep or distracted. Both were careful not to rush, aware of the complexities involved, yet drawn inexorably closer by shared experience and growing feelings. On the fifth day, Chang called the cabin's landline, a number known only to him. Maxwell has been formally charged, he reported. Multiple counts including fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, and solicitation of murder. His assets are completely frozen, and most of his key lieutenants have been arrested or are cooperating with authorities to save themselves. What about Jamie's inheritance? Sarah asked. Secure. As Victor's son, his trusts and shares remain intact, protected by the legal measures we activated. You've been confirmed as his legal guardian with full financial oversight until he comes of age. Relief washed over Sarah. So we can go home? Start over? I would recommend relocating, at least temporarily, Chang advised. Despite Maxwell's arrest, the extended Blackwood family has connections that might still pose danger. We've been considering that, Sarah admitted, glancing at Dominic, who stood nearby listening to her end of the conversation. There's a property in Victor's portfolio you might consider, Chang continued. A coastal home in Oregon. Secluded, beautiful, excellent schools nearby. It's been maintained but never used. For everything. I merely honored my promise to Victor in the end, Chang replied. Give Jamie my regards. He has his father's resilience. After the call, Sarah relayed the information to Dominic, who nodded thoughtfully. Oregon could work. Remote enough for security. Civilized enough for a good life for Jamie. And for you? Sarah asked carefully. Would you stay with us? Dominic's expression softened, something that happened more frequently now. If you want me to. I do, she said simply. We both do. That evening, as Jamie played contentedly with a toy boat by the edge of the lake under their watchful eyes, Dominic took Sarah's hand. There's something I should tell you, he began, uncharacteristic uncertainty in his voice. About my past. Things you should know before. Before what? Sarah prompted gently. Before you decide if I have a place in your lives long term. His expression was solemn. You know some of it, but not all. And you deserve the whole truth. Sarah squeezed his hand. Whatever it is, it's part of who you are. The man who saved us, who protected Jamie, who taught him to build card towers during thunderstorms. It might change how you see me, Dominic warned. I doubt that. Sarah's gaze was steady. But I'm listening. As the sun set over the lake, Dominic shared his full story. A childhood marked by poverty and abuse. Recruitment into criminal enterprises as a teenager. The violence he'd perpetrated as Maxwell's enforcer. And finally, the moment Victor had offered him redemption. Sarah listened without judgment, understanding that these experiences had shaped the complex, honorable man before her. So, that's it, he concluded. My life before you and Jamie. Not something I'm proud of, but not something I can change either. Sarah considered her words carefully. Thank you for trusting me with this. It doesn't change my feelings. If anything, it helps me understand your strength better, how far you've come, how much you've overcome. Relief washed over Dominic's features. I wasn't sure. I know who you are, Sarah said firmly, not who you were. The man I've come to love is the one sitting here now. The word hung between them, finally spoken aloud. Dominic's hand tightened around hers. I love you too, he said quietly. Both of you, more than I thought possible. As they sealed this confession with a kiss, Jamie's excited voice interrupted them. Look, I made it float all the way across, he called, pointing to his toy boat drifting toward the opposite shore. They turned to watch him, both smiling at his simple joy. In that moment, despite all they'd endured, Sarah felt a profound sense of rightness. This unconventional family, forged in danger and uncertainty, had somehow become exactly where she belonged. 3 months later, they were settled in the Oregon coastal home. The property was everything Chang had promised, spacious but homey, with breathtaking ocean views and enough land to ensure privacy. Jamie had started kindergarten at the local school, making friends and thriving in his new environment. Sarah had found work at a nearby medical clinic, using her nursing skills in a less demanding setting that allowed her more time with Jamie. Dominic, after some adjustment to civilian life, had begun consulting on security systems for high-profile clients, work that utilized his expertise without putting him in danger. Life had found a new rhythm, peaceful and ordinary in ways that sometimes seemed miraculous after their ordeal. They still took precautions, habit rather than fear now, but no threats had materialized. Maxwell Blackwood's trial was proceeding, with evidence mounting daily and former associates turning against him one by one. His empire had crumbled completely. On a sunny Saturday morning, as they prepared for a beach picnic, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. Dominic tensed from old instinct, moving protectively toward Jamie, even as he signaled Sarah to check the security monitor in the hallway. The camera showed a courier in uniform, holding a package and identification. "It's just a delivery," Sarah called, relief evident in her voice. Still cautious, Dominic answered the door while Sarah kept Jamie in the kitchen. Minutes later, he returned with a small, elegant box. "It's from Chang," he explained, examining the packaging carefully before opening it. Inside was a sealed envelope and a small, antique pocket watch. The envelope contained a brief note. "This belonged to Victor. He wanted Jamie to have it when the time was right. I believe that time has come. He would be proud of the family his son has found. With respect, Edward Chang." Sarah's eyes filled with tears as Dominic handed her the watch. It was beautiful, gold with intricate engravings and a photo inside the cover. A much younger Victor, smiling broadly. "We should give it to Jamie," she said softly. "A connection to his father." Dominic nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Victor would approve, I think, of all of this." "I like to think so too," Sarah agreed. Later that evening, after they'd presented the watch to Jamie, who was delighted by the treasure and the photo of the father he'd never known, Dominic found Sarah on the deck overlooking the ocean. The sunset painted the sky in spectacular colors, a fitting end to a significant day. "Jamie asleep?" Sarah asked as he joined her. "Finally. He wanted to wear the watch to bed." Dominic smiled, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "I convinced him it would be safer on his nightstand." Sarah leaned back against his chest, savoring the solid warmth of him. "I never imagined we'd end up here. That first night in the motel parking lot, I was terrified of you." "Rightfully so," Dominic acknowledged. "I wasn't exactly approachable. And now look at us." Sarah turned in his arms to face him. "Jamie asked me again this morning, you know." "Asked what?" "If you were going to be his dad for real." Sarah's eyes held a question of their own. "I told him we'd talk about it as a family." Dominic's expression grew serious. "What do you want, Sarah?" "I want what we've built here to be permanent," she said honestly. "I want Jamie to have stability, security, love. I want us to be a family, officially." "Are you proposing to me, Sarah Collins?" A smile tugged at Dominic's lips. "Maybe I am," she replied, matching his smile. "What do you say, Dominic Reyes? Want to give normal life a real shot?" Instead of answering immediately, Dominic reached into his pocket and produced a small velvet box, clearly not a recent purchase. "I've been carrying this around for weeks," he admitted, opening it to reveal a simple but elegant diamond ring. "Waiting for the right moment. Seems you beat me to it." Sarah's breath caught as he took her hand. "Is that a yes?" "It's a yes," Dominic confirmed, sliding the ring onto her finger. "To family, to normal life, to everything with you and Jamie." As they sealed their promise with a kiss, the last rays of sunset gilded the ocean before them. From danger and chaos had come something beautiful. A family bound not by blood but by choice, by love, and by the journey that had brought them together. Later that night, as Dominic slept peacefully beside her, Sarah crept to Jamie's room to check on him. He lay curled around his stuffed elephant, Victor's watch gleaming on the nightstand in the moonlight. On his wall hung the framed drawing he'd made at Dominic's cabin all those weeks ago, 3 stick figures, a family created against all odds. Sarah touched the drawing gently, grateful beyond words for the strange, dangerous path that had led them here. From a single mother hunted for her son's fortune to part of a family stronger than any threat they'd faced. It wasn't the life she'd expected, but it was exactly the one they needed. Tomorrow would bring Jamie's soccer practice, grocery shopping, and perhaps a call from Chang with updates on Victor's estate. Normal life with its beautiful, ordinary moments, protected by the extraordinary bond they'd formed during their darkest hours. Sarah returned to bed, curling against Dominic's warmth. As sleep claimed her, she reflected that some fortunes couldn't be measured in millions, only in the precious gift of finding exactly where you belong. If you enjoyed Sarah, Jamie, and Dominic's incredible journey from danger to family, please take a moment to like this video. Your support helps us continue bringing these emotional stories to life. Consider subscribing to our channel for more tales of love, redemption, and unexpected connections forged in the most challenging circumstances.